Thanks for staying with us for CBS News Pittsburgh as we go beyond the cover with local authors. Earlier this week, we spoke with the president of Duquesne University, Ken Gormley. Gormley's first work of fiction, Heiress of Pittsburgh, speaks directly to the heart of our local audience. Here's how he became involved with the Festival of Books.
Last year, Marshall Cohen and Lori Moser, who were organizing it, reached out to me and told me about this fabulous plan they had, and I said, I am in. I have had experience with book festivals. When my first nonfiction book came out, I was invited to be part as speaker at the Jacksonville Book Festival, and so I know how much energy there can be, how exciting this can be for a city. So I have been just thrilled to be part of this. And we have been working on it as the whole festival has evolved. My background as an author, I started writing nonfiction books. So I wrote a book about Archibald Cox, the Watergate special prosecutor, and then did a book on the whole Clinton scandals issue during the Clinton presidency that was a New York Times bestseller. So my big books before this had been nonfiction, but I always wanted to write a novel. I always wanted to write a book about fiction, and I always knew I wanted it to be about Pittsburgh. And so I started messing around with this about 30 years ago, and I'd put it aside on a shelf and then work on one of my other books or my job, my actual day job. But every once in a while I would dust it off and start rewriting it and messing around with it. So it may be 30 years later, but I'm happy that I stuck with it because it's been a real joy to work with it. It's meant to be a sort of love story to Pittsburgh. And incidentally, all proceeds from the sale of the book are going to an initiative at Duquesne University for students interested in creative writing. But it is set in little mill towns, much of it where I grew up, in Swissvale and Edgewood and Rankin, and these ethnic communities that really are synonymous with what we all love about Pittsburgh. But it's built around a will contest where this guy, Sean Rossi, grew up in Pittsburgh, goes off to Harvard Law School, and comes back trying to help ordinary people. And he's now representing his ex-girlfriend after all these years in this big battle over a trust fund. And it turns out a lot of it is built around this multi-million-dollar trust fund. And we learn about how his ex-girlfriend was born in a home for unwed mothers called the Rosalia Foundling Home in the Hill District, and the brutal treatment faced by unwed mothers and their babies back in this era in the 50s and 60s that really is a part of the story. But through flashbacks, we see how this all evolved, and he has to try to really help and save her family, who he really cares about. But it's all about Pittsburgh values and the things that are important to us and looking out for each other. And so I can't ruin the end of the story by telling you exactly what happens or who is the heiress of Pittsburgh, but it is a lot of familiar territory. Anyone from Pittsburgh is going to have a lot of memories brought back for them. Sure, I'll read a little bit from one of the early chapters of the book that maybe gives you and the viewers a little bit of sense of this. And again, the book is called The Heiress of Pittsburgh, and this is from the opening arguments in Orphans Court, a fairly mysterious and obscure court in downtown Pittsburgh. In the lexicon of the town where I grew up, a mill hunky was a term of endearment, even though it might have sounded like a dirty ethnic slur to outsiders. Of course, if a person didn't speak the vernacular that coursed through the streets and insul brick-sided houses of our gritty neighborhood, it was easy to take it the wrong way, like somebody hearing poetry in an unfamiliar language. My hometown of Swissvale was located in the Monongahela River Valley, referred to by locals as the Mon Valley, where steel mills and factories belched fumes and flames into the sky. Dozens of factory towns dotted both sides of the river, creating a smoky, fiery gateway to downtown Pittsburgh a few miles away. A writer once described it as hell with its lid off, and that was fair. But these towns, too, were America's original melting pot, home to a rich stew of memorable characters, many of whom were my friends and relatives. Like most residents of Swissvale and the other nearby mill communities, I was a mongrel, a Heinz 57 variety, a blend of Irish and Italian with a drop of Slovak blood splashed in for good measure. My ancestors had come to Pittsburgh in the late 19th century and scraped out a living in one mill or another so their offspring could have a better life. The lucky ones could even get an education. Through this accident of ancestry, I'd come to be born into a lower middle class world with no pedigree or family tree worth noting. Yet somehow I'd loved that lack of distinction. It seemed remarkable to me that such simple genetic materials could be brought across the ocean by immigrants looking for jobs in dirty mills, then shaken up like a phosphate to produce something so exotic and wondrous. Writing is a sort of lonely enterprise, and lots of people start books and never finish them. And that's one of the amazing things about the Greater Pittsburgh Festival of Books. We are going to be showcasing all of these homegrown writers from Pittsburgh who have amazing stories to tell, from everything from children's books to fiction, nonfiction. So I really think it's worth people turning out for it. It becomes a real celebration, and there will be food trucks and other things. But it really is a statement of what is so special, what does make Pittsburgh, Pittsburgh. And all of these qualities will come together on that special day. I really can't wait for it.
That was Ken Gormley, Duquesne University president and published author.